Hey, what's going on everybody? Boilon here, and in today's video we're going to be talking all about the upcoming Scourge Rogue Famine event that's going to be going live tomorrow at store reset time. Now, what we're going to be doing in this video is we're going to be talking about all of the Scourges that are going to be going live in this event and why it's important and which ones you should be considering to use and not use. So we're going to be going through all of the Scourges that are available in the Famine event and which ones I think are a little bit more challenging than others, ones that you might want to start off with working on, and which ones you might want to avoid doing, and my reasonings for this as well. So you know what to do, everyone. If you're ready to go, then let's boil this down. And so of course, there's always a spreadsheet, right? So this is my Scourge tier list updated. Actually, it's not really a tier list anymore. I guess it sort of is. So we have 3 difficulties, just to start things off. I kind of did this for the Pestilence event. So this time it's shaded, and we have easy, medium, and hard. I think I had them as like 1, 2, and 3 as a difficulty. I have some notes here as well. This will be listed in my Discord as well, in the Boilon's Resources channel, a few hours or so after the video goes live, for any of those who want your own copy of this. And I have this just kind of in preparation here. You can see this like star is broken. This is just because, this is for me. I'm going to be testing the Scourges when the event goes live tomorrow, store reset time, and kind of checking to see which ones are broken, which ones are not, if any of them are, because we know that when Pestilence went live, there was 4 broken Scourges that gave basically free points. So I'm going to be checking this again, and I encourage everyone else to do the same before you really get started on your real runs, that kind of thing, just so you can kind of or take advantage of it, right? I mean, like, who knows? I think that's a reason why that they're releasing this event on a Wednesday and not on a Friday, because what happened was that they released it on Friday for Pestilence, and then they went away for the weekend, and nothing got changed over the weekend. So I think that now that they're launching it on Wednesday, people are going to be there, so if anything is broken, it probably will get fixed a little bit quicker than normal. But anyways, let's get started. So I want to start off at the top, and just for the record, a lot of these are former Pestilence. Oh wait, actually this is the Pestilence. My bad. I should be on this one. It's the same chart, but okay, so I was on the wrong one. So the ones that are listed as Famine, these are ones that were available on the Pestilence Scourge. The ones that are labeled as New Famine, these are brand new Scourges associated with Famine only and not available on Pestilence. So we'll be talking about that. It's the same list. I was on the wrong tab because I have one for both. So let's get started. So Experimental Serum. Now this is enemies gain 10% max health, and on the surface, this doesn't seem that bad, but it's only worth 1 point, and I don't like that. And so it's kind of, all of these ones with max health, they're kind of bad for, nodes 5 and 10, and they're not really worth much points. So you're stacking up harder difficulties for that nodes 5 and 10, which is going to be the most challenging section. And from what I've heard from other content creators, node 5 in particular is really, really bad. So a lot of these Scourges are going to be kind of sort of in mind of how much harder it makes that node 5. For the other nodes and the other lanes, I think that there's, more characters that you have to work with, especially if you're, a late game roster kind of thing. You probably have a ton of characters to choose from. So my perspective for a lot of these is their difficulty towards getting you through the entire run kind of thing, and I'll point out certain things that need to be pointed out. Dark Resolve 1. Now this one has stars because this was broken during the Pestilence event, and I'm assuming it's been fixed, but tentatively I'm leaving it here anyways because I haven't confirmed this in the new event, obviously. This was on ally death, enemies gain defense up. So this is pretty easy to avoid, which is why it's given an easy difficulty here. Basically just don't die. If you die, if any of your characters die, you probably want to reset, unless this is like the end of one of the nodes or the lanes and you're not going to use those characters again. Experimental Serum 2, again, this is the enemies gain max health for 20%, and I actually put this in the hard category. So this is bad for nodes 5 and 10. You get a little bit more points than Experimental Serum 1, but overall it's a pretty low amount of points. So I think the type of people who are going to be using the max health ones are going to be the people who are pushing really, really hard. 10%, 20%, there's another one actually down below, I'm pretty sure. And this stacks up a ton of max health for more hit points that you have to clear through for node number 5. And so for that reason, I don't think that's something I'm going to be using to the start. I think You know, if you're really trying really hard, you can add this on later, but I just don't think it's worth it personally. Now, there's a brand new one here for Famine, and this is Power Siphon 1. There's, I believe, a Power Siphon 2 as well. Enemies gain plus 5% drain. Now, to me, that doesn't feel like a lot. Now, I know that they're going to hit a little bit harder, so that 5% drain may translate into something a little bit more, especially if it's AoE attacks, but 5% on the surface doesn't seem that bad, so tentatively I'm putting this in the easy category because I don't think it's going to be that bad. Now, you could equate, like, well, what's worse, 5% drain or 20% max health? And I guess we'll have to actually, like, play that out to really figure that out, but on the surface, there's much worse ones coming down. And in case you didn't notice, these are also aligned by point value. So not by difficulty value, but by the amount of points that they're worth. Now, gloating is also worth 5 points. When any player character dies, enemies gain 2 ability energy. Now, this is similar to Dark Resolve 1. And what's weird, though, is that the naming is different. So on allied death, and then when any player character dies, I believe this has to do with minions. So on allied death also includes minions, whereas this one might not. I don't know. To be honest, I'm not 100% sure on this one. This is the same problem in Pestilence, I think, as well. But this makes it harder to use burner teams, because if any of your characters die, all of them gain 2 ability energy, and I probably wouldn't use this at all. I don't recall using this in Pestilence because I think it was pretty challenging as well there. Number 7 points for Not So Fast. When a player character gains ability energy, apply slow to them. And then you have Devil's Bargain 2, which is very similar. When a player character gains ability energy, they gain defense down. So you're gaining, if you're using both, you're getting slow and defense down. Now, really, this is just, avoiding characters that are ability energy generators. Unfortunately, for Nodes 5, you have characters like Miss Marvel with her ultimate slap, and that does generate ability energy for characters, and that could trigger this, and it actually very much would do, unless they have immunity. And so this could be challenging. I don't know how many other characters there are in the different lanes that generate ability energy. I'm thinking of, like, Capsam, but I don't even know if he's even used. I don't know if Secret Avengers are even in this, to be honest. But yeah, characters that do Shuri, I don't think she's on it either, actually, because we don't have a heroes lane strict out, and we don't have a global lane. So I'm not. You might be able to run this. I put it in the middle because this is still a bit of an issue for the Young Avengers on Node 5, but you very well could use this if there's not a lot of characters in the other lanes that you're using that generate ability energy. Now, this is a brand new one. Gloves Off. This is new for Famine. On enemy turn, steal 5% health from the lowest health player character for 10 points. This sounds hard, because if at the start of the match, or even just, any time during the match, a lot of enemies take their turns back to back, that's 5% from your lowest health character, for every character, for every enemy. And so if like 5 of them take a turn, that's like 25% from your lowest health player character. This could trigger death pretty easily. And so for 10 points, this is definitely in the hard category for me, because I think that this is going to be a little bit more challenging to micromanage. And, this is going to be, I think, a more advanced Scourge for players who are really pushing the top end of the points. Too Clever, 10 points. When a player or character uses their special, they gain ability block. I used this one in Pestilence, and I didn't have a hard time getting around this. It kind of changes the way that you take your turns, though. And so you might want to think about, the order in which you take your turns, your ultimate versus your special, and what skills you want to use in what order. And or if you have anyone on your team that can cleanse, because then you can just cleanse the ability block or get rid of it. But, otherwise this might be a bit of a challenge. But overall, I believe this is a very usable Scourge here. Power Fatigue 1, player character's special abilities cost more energy. I think if you're going to use Too Clever, you might as well just use Power Fatigue. I don't think it's much of a difference, to be honest. It's one more ability energy, but again, it's not really a huge deal. Unkillable for 12 points. When an enemy drops below percent health, I believe that, 50% health, they gain Death Proof. Again, not a huge deal. I use this in Pestilence as well, and didn't have a hard time with this one. You can copy the Death Proof, or you can clear the Death Proof, whatever. You can punch your way through it. Typically not a big deal. In Pestilence, this was a bit of a challenge in Node 10 when I was trying to get rid of certain characters, but other than that, it's a pretty easy points in my opinion. Pyrrhic Victory. This is 12 points. When a player character blocks, apply stun to them. This was not a big deal, not as big of a deal in Pestilence, but this is a huge effing deal in Famine, because you're using Young Avengers in Nodes 5 and 10. So this is an absolute FU to the Young Avengers, and any of the deflects that are triggered by the team, which is a lot and very frequent, it's going to stun the characters. So this isn't good. And actually, it's really bad in conjunction with some of the other Scourges towards the bottom of the list, and we'll get to that. So I'm not sure I would run this time for Famine, because, yeah, it's an absolute FU for Young Avengers, and probably other characters as well, like Agatha? No, I'm pretty sure there's other I was thinking Darkhold, but I don't remember if it's Agatha or Wong that gives it. Either way, this is a pretty challenging Scourge, so I'm not sure if I'm going to be running this one this time around. I don't want to have a super hard time on Node 5, and that's what I'm thinking of the most. Poisoned Energy 2, for 12 points when a player character gains ability energy, apply defense down for 1 turn per ability energy gained. So this is cleansable, and I don't think that this is a big deal. And actually, this is very similar to these ones down here, Devil's Bargain 2. So unless I'm missing something, when a player character gains ability energy, they gain defense down. When a player character gains ability energy, apply defense down for 1 turn per ability energy gained. So this is just like an add-on to Devil's Bargain 2. That's how I'm kind of interpreting this one. And so, if you're running Devil's Bargain 2, you might as well run Poisoned Energy too. Unless I'm getting this one completely wrong, but this is how it was that I saw in some of the videos and in the data mines. I'm kind of curious how the interaction of this is going to be. This sounds like it's just for 12 points, you're just adding on an extra turn of defense down, which doesn't seem that bad, especially if you can cleanse it. But hey, that's just my initial thoughts. Blinded by Power for 15, when a player character uses their ultimate, they gain blind. This one seems a bit challenging to me. I don't remember if this was actually active in Pestilence, but it sucks, blind sucks, and I think this is a bit of an advanced Scourge for people who are really trying to consider the turn order of which they use their skills and to maybe get around the blind. The blind doesn't affect certain characters, maybe. I don't know. This isn't one that I would personally crutch on. Strong Opener for 15. On spawn, enemies gain immunity. This is super bad for debuffing any enemies on round 1 for characters that are fast. Now, I'd have to run the actual Scourge to find out myself, but typically you don't want your enemies to have immunity on turn 1. I don't know how many of the teams that I'm going to be running are going to be relying on debuffs on turn 1, but this could be potentially really, really bad. So I put this in the hard difficulty, so do keep this in mind. I'm not sure if this is something that I would start off with using, but this is definitely a more advanced Scourge, I think, in my opinion. Now we have Weakened for 15 points. Player character's healing is reduced by 20%. I absolutely use this in Pestilence, and it didn't really make a big deal. There are some characters that you're going to be using that are healing, like Squirrel Girl and other lanes as well. But frankly, at the end of the day, I don't think that's a big deal. I would actually rather take the Weakened Scourge than, say, taking any of the Experimental Serums, for that matter, or even the Drain ones. And actually, for the same points, for 15, that's the same equivalent of Power Siphon 1 and Experimental Serum 2, 1, and some of these other ones, for example. So yeah, the 15 points on this, you can definitely add that one on, in my opinion. Dark Rally for 17. When a player character uses their ultimate, all enemies gain ability energy. Now, this is pretty bad, I think, especially for nodes 5, which have a lot of really bad enemies, and who have attacks that don't start fully charged necessarily. This is definitely a more advanced Scourge, in my opinion. A lot of the ones that are listed as hard, in my opinion, are probably more advanced Scourges for those advanced players, so something that you might want to consider. This is different than like the special ones, the ones above, where we talked about using your special. You don't want the enemies to get like unlimited ability energy, so this doesn't sound like fun, in my opinion. Power Fatigue 2. For 17 points. Now, this is a medium difficulty. Player characters' ultimate abilities cost more ability energy. This is not the same and not as bad, because there's also the one up here, somewhere up here with the special, right? Cost more. Number 10 for Power Fatigue 1. I think for 17 for, 1 extra ability energy on the ultimate, I think that's not a huge deal. Bleeder, 20 points. When a player character takes damage, they gain bleed. So again, this is additional damage that you're going to be taking on nodes 5 and 10 specifically. But this was quite of an advanced Scourge, I think, because obviously the damage that you're going to take on bleed is going to be equivalent to the damage that they deal to you. So the harder they hit you, the harder the bleed is going to tick down. Now, for Young Avengers, they do get death proof, so the bleed will not pass through the death proof. But I would still keep an eye on this, and I do think it's a bit more of an advanced Scourge. Power Siphon 2. For 20 points, enemies gain a 20% train. Now, this kind of doubles back a little bit to Power Siphon 1 for 5%. I put this as an easy Scourge, but I do think that 20% is quite a bit more, but it is worth 20 points. So this is something that I'm going to be grappling with about whether or not I'm going to be using this or not. This could result in a lot of healing for the enemies. This is what I wrote down here in the notes section, because 20% is a lot more than 5%. It's 4 times as much. It is worth 4 times as much points, but I think without actually seeing an action on the difficulties that I'm running, it's hard to say how much this translates to. So I'm not sure if this is one that I'm going to start with, but this is definitely one that you could probably consider adding on if you want to raise your score. Off balance, this is a new one for the Famine. Let's zoom in a little bit, actually, so my apologies for you people watching on mobile phones, probably don't even know what I'm talking about. Off balance, when a player character gains offense up or defense up, apply heal block to them. Now, this absolutely is an FU to the Young Avengers and others with buffs. Oops, scrolled too far. Because there is a lot of that with the Young Avengers, and offense up and defense up more generally is pretty common. Applying heal block to them really isn't good. I mean, you can cleanse the heal block, but there's another one where this could cause problems, and this is just a little bit down below. And so for that reason, I have it as a hard difficulty as well. Experimental Serum 4, this is 20 points for 40% max health. This goes back to exactly what I already said about max health, is that I think this is more of an advanced Scourge for people who are really pushing those upper echelon of points. While it might not sound like a lot, it's kind of the equivalent to a med bay, but if you're stacking up 40%, 20%, 10%, and drain and all that, it can get really, really nasty, so I would be cautious about that. Pretty sure that's probably what I said over here. Lots of hit points to punch through on notes 5 and 10. And then moving on to the end is near. So this is 23 points. When a player character health drops below 50% max health, apply trauma to them. Now, this was in Pestilence. I believe it also got a point increase. Now, this with this one, the off balance where they get the heal block, if you combine the two of them, then you're getting heal block and trauma potentially, you know, if you're under 50% health. And this is where I'm kind of, I don't think it's a good idea. Trauma by itself is not necessarily bad. You know, it's kind of easy to get through, I think, as long as you don't have a stack of negative stats effects. But if you do have that off balance, this might be something that you might want to consider not running, or maybe only using one of them. I think having both of them is a bit of an advanced Scourge tactic for those of you who are trying to push the points. Vile Surgeons for 23 points. On enemy turn, they gain offense up. Now, this is absolutely a hard Scourge here. So offense, I should have said offense up. It's offense up. Offense up all the time is very harsh. You know, having that on every turn that the enemy takes is a lot of extra damage that you're going to be taking. So I personally think that this is a hard Scourge here. Now, this is a brand new one, Speed Boost for Famine. On spawn, fill speed bar for all enemies plus 100%. All enemies are getting a free turn on round 1. This sounds fucking nuts to me. This is definitely a more challenging Scourge. This is definitely a more advanced Scourge. I don't know how you would necessarily get around this unless you maybe do a burner team before you go into the node, and that way the cooldowns are burned, and so the extra turn that they might take might not make a big deal. That's kind of what I'm thinking here, but otherwise this sounds absolutely nuts if you're going into a node for the first time. They're going to get 2 turns, essentially, back to back. And if they're, depending on their speed, of course. But otherwise, this just does not sound fun at all. Going Rogue, this is a brand new one as well for this, obviously, for this event. When a positive effect or a negative effect is applied, increase the duration of all positive effects to the enemies by +1, and the negative effects to yourselves by +1 as well. So longer buffs and debuffs, you can clear these, you can cleanse them. You know, I don't think it's a big deal, and for 30 points I'm surprised how much you get. It could be bad for things like, say, trauma. If you combine this with other ones like the end is near or anyone that gives negative stats effects, then you're going to get a +1 presumably if they interact with each other. Now this has to be tested, of course, because I don't know that for sure, but if you were to get trauma from this one here, the end is near, would you get 2 turns of trauma instead? Maybe. That's what it sounds like it should happen. So I'm putting this one in the middle for now. I don't think it's a hard difficulty one, but because as far as the positive effects go, you can get rid of these. But for the negative ones, it's in the medium difficulty for me until I actually get to test it more. And finally, we have, it's new for Famine as well, Stay Down. For 30 points, on a player character's turn, remove revive once from that character. Now, saw this one and I was a bit confused, admittedly, because the only characters that I think that this is going to impact is Dormammu, Gamora, Nebula, and Ultron. There's Adam Warlock, sorry. There's probably a few others, but realistically, at the end of the day, and I don't know, because people are going to complain, so I'll add them in here. Adam Warlock. I don't know, maybe there's some other ones. But Dormammu's probably the main one here, right? Because he gives like a revive once to everyone on his team. So I personally think that this is a Scourge designed to somewhat counter Dormammu. But for those people who don't have Dormammu, I don't think that this is a big deal. And so you're getting 30 points for this. I absolutely think that this is an easy one. Now, we've gone through all of the Scourges, and what's interesting to say here is that for once, actually, the difficulties do somewhat match the points. With the exception of Stay Down and maybe Weakened, I think you can see how a lot of the green ones, in my opinion, my initial thoughts of like what's easy, is actually reflective of the total amount of points. Now you can see that as we go up a bit higher, typically, I do think that they are a bit more challenging as far as the points go, that what they're worth. But I think that this will get updated once again later on to get my initial thoughts out of the way and my thoughts after I actually get to run them. So this was just here to hopefully guide you in terms of what you want to start with and what kind of Scourges that you should start thinking about and how they impact your characters. Now, unfortunately, I am taking my partner to a birthday concert tomorrow tomorrow night, so I won't be on at store reset time too much, but I am going to be putting out videos, of course, over the coming days related to Scourge, and hopefully we can all get ourselves towards as high of a rogue as we possibly can. So I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and until next time, stay safe and healthy, and see you all later. Boilon signing out.